Alright, now this is part three. Should be a short one on the response of the locals. So when the British first, this would be well, the timing of this would be how did the locals respond to the British rule? Okay, um, it would be detailing their responses over the period of the process of the colonization. So it's not just that one particular time in which they intervene in Perak, okay, but it's over the course of time in the entire uh, in the entire in the entire period of in the entire process of colonization. Okay, so now let's look at the different groups of people. So we'll mainly be looking at four different groups. So something similar to what we have in Singapore. Okay, the Malays, Chinese, and Indians, and of course one additional group down there, that is the difference between the Malay chiefs and the indigenous Malays. Okay. Okay, now first of all, the Malay chiefs, most of them they chose to cooperate with the British, because when they cooperated with the British, actually, if you think about it, if you are the king, actually, it's not as fun as it seems in the movies where if you're not happy and then you say off with the head, and then you get to go do things your way. But basically, if you're the king, you are actually expected to rule. You are expected to be the government. So basically, you are like the president or the prime minister of the country, and that is not an easy job to do lah. I mean, for Singapore, you might look at our prime minister receiving last time for a period of time he had like $3 to $4 million a year, and then you think, wow, I get to be a millionaire by being a prime minister, but it's not that simple. Okay, so basically, if you have to be if you're going to be a leader of a country, you better make sure you do your job. Okay, so for the Malay chiefs, if suddenly, hey, the British come in and they do the job of governing for you, and at the same time you still get paid for it. And look at the second point, you still would receive education. Your family and your relatives would receive minor positions in the colonial administration. Why not? Okay, just hand everything over to the British, and they'll take care of everything for you. Isn't that wonderful? So there was no resistance from the Malay chiefs. For the Malays, okay, most of them did not have any interaction with the. Okay, hang on. All right, most of them. Uh, right, sorry. Let me finish up the Malay chiefs part first. So the British made a show of retaining the Sultan's powers, but even though they don't really have any actual power, although that's still a little bit debatable, like it's not clear who has the power, who has not. But it's likely that the British had more power than the Sultans lah. So it made a show of retaining them and gave them elaborate palaces and regular incomes. So it's like becoming a salaried employee of the British empire, if you want to put it that way. And they were protected by British power. Why not? You get free defense also, right? So that's a good thing, isn't it? So this is one of the examples of the palace that they had given by the British to the sultans. Okay, so yeah, like I said, they receive education, positions in the civil service. So basically, they would be quite happy to be there. Now, however, staying on the Malay chiefs, there's one small group of them. That is the unfederated Malay states, sultans. They refuse to actually join the federation. But of course, they're not very important economically, so therefore they didn't really mind the fact that they didn't join until much later. Okay, so eventually, most of them, I think Johor was the last one. It's actually found inside a textbook on page 63. No, sorry, Johor was one of the first ones, 1904, to join Unfederated Malay States. Perlis, okay, Prlis, one of the most northern states in Malaya. Okay, that means the state that's quite near to Thailand. Okay, now that particular state only joined in 1930. Okay, so sorry. So but since they were not important economically, so never mind, you don't join, it's okay, it doesn't matter to me. All right, so those are the Malay chiefs. Okay, now the indigenous Malays, it means to say that they are the natives or indigenous, by the way, it means natives, original people of the land, or original as much as history can document it lah. I mean, So we know that, like for example, me as a Chinese, I know that my original land would be in China, and then the Indians would be India, and then the Malays would be this particular region. Actually, not just in Malaysia, but in the entire Southeast Asia, they will be considered the original people of the land. But if you think about it, I mean, well, we only document history to a certain number of years. How do we know that like 5,000 years ago the Chinese weren't here? I realize that now that sounds like pretty racist to, exemplify the role of the Chinese, but no, that's not what I'm trying to say. Okay, what if the Caucasians were here originally? Well, we don't know that. So, but as far back as we can document history, so the Malays are the original people of the land. All right, and they did not resist the British, the normal people. Okay, sorry about that. They did not resist the British because they listened to the Malay chiefs. And since Malay chief say British is friend means British my friend. That's as simple as it is. Okay, because and they did not have much contact with the British. For the people who were living, normal people living day to day, they wouldn't really mind, they would just follow whatever the leader says. They won't have time to go and research on their own. Oh, let's go and Google who the British are. They didn't have that luxury lah. So they basically just follow whatever their Malay chiefs tell them to. All right, let me see if the other slide has something interesting to that. Okay, not really. Right, so we move on to the Chinese. They are, well, they cooperated with the British to maintain the peace. So basically, they are people who just simply, well, also work together with the British, mainly because they are very good businessmen. The Chinese, well, that's what we are, or that's what our ancestors are well known for, being stingy, good businessmen, and knowing how to do business and being strong economically. That's all. So they're willing to cooperate with the British, and the British actually plan different towns to house all the different groups of Chinese. So it's not just one big group of Chinese, but basically you have the Teochew, and then you have the Hakka, you have who else? Cantonese. So these are the different groups of Chinese, and the British actually still need to separate them because they still might have a tendency to fight each other lah. And leaders of Gihin and Haisan, you see them coming up again. They were given seats in the state council. And for example, this prominent Chinese leader, Yap Ah Loy, you can read more about him. He's Hakka. He's found on textbook page 65, and he became very rich, and he was appointed as the Justice of Peace. Okay, I know I used the words rich and appointed in the same sentence, but I don't mean to imply that there was any corruption taking place. I'm just saying that he became successful, and then because he's a person of influence, and therefore he was appointed as the Justice of Peace. Okay. All right. Now, so for the Indians, there was no resistance against them because mainly they were being brought here by the British to work in the plantations and mines. So, well, they don't really have much of a response. And they were really a minority in Malaya. And since the British actually colonized India first, so therefore they were able to actually bring these Indians over to work in the plantations. So since they were living separately, minding their own business, and given a job by the British, they had no reason to oppose the British down here. All right, so that's it. That actually ends off this part about the responses. Very, very simple question. Well, this one will be an N-level question. How did the locals respond? Was simply just describe. For the moment, I can't really think of an explain question. Unless they ask like explain how did the locals differ in their responses to the British rule. Yeah, that's a possible in my question. Explain how did the locals differ in their responses to the British rule, although there was not much of a difference actually. Explain why the locals all agreed to explain how the locals were similar in their response to the British rule. Differ would still be a more relevant question. Okay, let me think about this. But basically, this is really a small part of it, of the textbook, and it's very easy to understand. So I think the more bigger part will be the next one. So that will be in my video. Will be considered part 4. All right, of the part four of this chapter lah. Okay, so this will be considered part three. Yeah. All right, and so please move on to the next video.